The costume design was great. You know, beautiful gowns.
Okay, great gowns, beautiful gowns.
Hello, ladies, and guys, and anyone else. Welcome back to Black Wahala. And today, we will be talking about a little old show called Bridgerton and my grievances with this show. So I wasn't sure if I was going to declare my ideas on this show, but since it's been announced that there's a second season in the works and it's been renewed and people have been raving about it and it's reached 82 million homes, I thought, why not? Now, I consider myself a connoisseur of sorts of historical fiction. Think of literally any historical fiction movie you've heard of, I've probably seen it. Even higher chances if it's a historical romance, I most likely have seen it. So I was super excited to hear that Bridgerton was being adapted because I have heard of the novels by Julia Quinn before and I've even read excerpts, but it always felt too adulty for me when I was reading historical fiction, so I never really read the books, but I was just ready to get my historical romance on. But it wasn't that great to me, okay? To me. Of course, I don't think that art has to be all things for all people, and so it is totally okay if you really enjoyed this show. I definitely enjoyed some points of the show, but in general, I was not really a fan. And I am a self-professed hater, and I was actually really surprised by the reception that the show received. So I will tell you why I did not like Bridgerton and will most likely not be watching the second season that's coming soon. Before I do this, I feel obligated to tell you that there will be possible spoilers in this video. And if you plan on watching the show, stop right now. You've been warned. Also, some of my critiques come from a really great article about the show by some scholars, and they really expressed how I felt about this show. So I will link the article in the description box below if you'd like to read it, because they really go into detail. First of all, I feel like I should talk about the things that I really did enjoy about the series. The costume design was great. Beautiful gowns.
Okay, great gowns, beautiful gowns.
I always really enjoy when costume design is authentic and looks realistic to the era or period that's being depicted. And while this was not possible in all the pieces, and some of it was a true and tried mess, child, as it is being shown to a modern audience, I really enjoyed how the costume design worked to make the world of Bridgerton come alive and feel more authentic. Also, the acting was great. Regé-Jean Page is just, I first saw him in Sylvie's Love, and while he barely had any lines in that movie, he definitely caught my eye. So I think he did a great job in the show. All the actors did a great job and really came to do something. They really came to do what they came to do, okay? Now, let's talk about what I did not like about Bridgerton. This show requires us to do a whole lot of imagining of the past that I don't think I could actually get behind, and it was the biggest issue for me while watching, and I know a lot of people will not agree with this take, but it must be said. So I began the show believing that it was going to be like a Brandy, Cinderella type of thing, as it had a colorblind casting. However, halfway into the series, we learned that the kingdoms were separated, and then there were two different kingdoms with black people in one kingdom and white people on a different kingdom. That was until the queen, who is black, married the king, who is white. I have a problem with this. I don't know if this is lazy writing or they just wanted to quickly address the race problem, but it was a bad rationale, in my opinion. So you would like me to believe that race is real in this world and the races were separated, but because of the queen, black people were then integrated into the kingdom? And not only integrated, but some of the black families were venerated into positions of the gentry. Come on. Now, you know that the white gentry was really not with that. Like, while it certainly was not unheard of to have black people as part of aristocracy in 19th century Europe, it certainly was not common. This era of time was also during the time of slavery, and that is ultimately not something we can run away from, even in this post-racial fantasy of a show. In this show, there is no slavery and no brutality happening, but we see the aristocracy bathed in wealth. Where does this wealth come from? Where did they get the materials to design and create these elaborate dresses and display these copious amounts of wealth that we see on screen? Because during the real Regency era, and in 1813, which is the time period that Bridgerton is set in, slavery was a large part of this wealth, whether people would like to acknowledge it or not. There is no mention of those in the colonies who slaved away doing free labor, working in the trade that financed the British state. While I'm not going to completely blame the creators, because creators who want to try and write stories about slavery and give it justice are often asked to change the plot or write in characters or plot points that will make white people feel more comfortable by producers and studio execs, I'm definitely bothered by this rationale. Instead of shows that depict slave revolt, for instance, the Haitian Revolution is something I would like to see on screen, but I know it should not and cannot come from Hollywood. But we get benevolent revisionism all the time.
You think I'm about to? I'm not watching this! Look! I'm tired of it.
This was a point of contention that really grated me about this show. How is it a colorblind casting and still a majority of the characters are white? The only people of color in the show who have speaking roles are black. Sure, you see a few Asian characters in the background, but none of them have any lines. I was really hoping that this would be an opportunity to really include various groups of people under the pretense of colorblind casting, but it honestly really failed on this front, and it was, to me, a bit embarrassing as I was really expecting more from the show. I mean, this is well, it came out in 2020, but come on. It's funny because even the black main characters are very light bright. The colorism is really outstanding, and it was one of the first things that I noticed about the show. So of course, we have to talk about colorism, y'all. Listen, Shonda's sister, I know you really love your light-skinned men, but please, can we get some variety up in here? I know y'all see it. While I'm not going to go through another spiel on colorism, as I feel most people should know what this is by now, as I have made a few videos discussing colorism, it was very annoying to see that colorism was not absent in the show, and there was definitely a reinforcement of racial stereotypes. So if you want to learn more about colorism, you should check out my videos on colorism. So let's actually talk about the characters that we see on screen. Oh, I also wanted to add, before I begin talking about the characters, just know that I am aware that not all black characters have to be good. I know it is good that we have complex depictions of blackness on screen, and we don't always have to like the characters, but these are just my critiques on the characters. Beginning with the Duke of Hastings, surprisingly, he is a lighter skinned black man. I was actually expecting him to be darker skinned, but like also Shonda is helming this, so maybe that's why. And usually, because like Netflix really likes to do this thing where they'll put a black man who is dark skinned next to a black woman who is going to be light skinned or biracial, that really wasn't the case here. Somewhat. However, the Duke definitely fulfilled some typical stereotypes about black men. For one, he is described as a rake, but we actually don't really see any rakish behavior in comparison to Daphne's brothers, who literally have affairs all around town, literally every episode. It is especially interesting that the scenes involved with the Duke are depicted through Daphne's eyes, and he is heavily sexualized. As Jessica Parr notes, it is impossible to not think of the sexual exploitation of enslaved black men when thinking about this aspect of the storyline. It is impossible to ignore the racial dynamics of an almost solitary black nobleman as a desirable yet unwilling prize for more than a few young white women and their mothers in the context of a British Empire that was still engaged in slavery. Next, we have Marina Thompson, a young, light-skinned black woman who is a distant cousin of the Featherington family. Marina very much fulfills the Jezebel trope, a stereotype of black women, and she manipulates white men to do her bidding. Let's not even talk about the fact that she is a single mother and is basically married off at the end of the series. In many ways, Marina's treatment by the other characters was strange, as she isn't really sold off, but you feel like at many times that she's being auctioned off to suitors. Like, for instance, there's that scene where Marina's being examined by Lord Rutledge, I think that's his name. And that scene was ridiculous to me, and it like just reeked of the slave market. It literally reminded me of, you see those pictures of black women at the slave market, like where they're being sold, and like the way he was examining her felt very much like a scene from the slave market. The other characters who are darker skinned somewhat fulfill other tropes of blackness on screen. So for instance, you have Lady Dansbury, who you could easily say fulfills the magical Negro trope, as she is the old wise black woman who always knows more than other characters. Then of course you have Simon's dad, who is the darkest skinned character. And he is of course an absentee and violent father. Cool. He fulfills all the tropes of the violent, darker skinned man to a T. The one character who you could say somewhat disturbed the typical tropes was Simon's friend, Will, who was the boxer. He, did everything he could for his family and kind of depicted a different style or type of masculinity in comparison to the other man on the show. But of course, his wife was a lighter skinned woman. Also, there are other things that really bothered me, such as the queer baiting, which every time we got a hint of that, I got excited, but I guess not. And the problem of consent between Daphne Bridgerton and the Duke of Hastings. Like, that scene was strange and weird, and even though like they tried to play it off and they like did a better job of that scene in comparison to the book, which was ridiculous. That scene was ridiculous in the book. There's still a lot of problems with that scene. Also, I could not stand the modern pop music. Like, hearing Ariana Grande in orchestra cover form in the background was not it for me. that kind of took me out of the scene and the movie and the world building a bit. And I felt like a lot of the episodes were fillers and things didn't really get all that exciting, at least for me, until the last few episodes, to me. So I really hope that in the next season, some of these issues will be rightfully focused on. But however, I most likely will not be watching the next season. I know that the show reached 82 million homes, which is a ridiculous amount, but I feel like many of the things I brought up in this video are very important if so many people are watching it. And it also makes me think about the idea, like, where does this desire to see a post-racial fantasy come from? Because obviously so many people are watching it, right? And if you want to do, there are ways to do this that the show really dropped a ball on. So I'm really hoping they address it, because if that many people are watching it and you're not really thinking about it critically, like, that bothers me a little bit. So thank you for watching. Let me know your feelings on Bridgerton in the comments below, because I'd like to hear more of what other people think about what I said, and their overall opinions on the show. Did you enjoy it? Did you have any problems with the show? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and share the video and subscribe to my channel if you like what I do on here. You can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram and on even TikTok at Black Wahala to hear more from me. Bye!